I know.
Okay. Welcome back to the From the Fabricator podcast. I'm your host, Max Perlstein. Thank you so much for joining me yet again. Episode number 2 for 2024, and it's the recurring guests episode. I've got Nick St. Denis of KMR Research to talk forecast. Then I have Tim Widner from Lippert Components to talk pretty much everything else under the sun. Brilliant guy. I'm a big fan of. Both were guests back by popular demand. So you'll be hearing them in a moment. As always, this podcast, we are graciously sponsored by myglassclass.com and the brand new myglassfab.com. It is online training. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 online. You can do it at your leisure. You have on the My Glass class side over 100 different courses, 60 of them, more than 60 of them actually in Spanish. So depending on your workforce and who's taking these courses, they're there in a different language. My Glass Fab, brand new, fantastic for the fabricator. If you're a fabricator, you want to be in that. So myglassclass.com. Thank you to the NGA for their support. Speaking of the NGA, coming up, if you have not signed up for BEC and GPAD, you need to do that pretty quick. It's coming up pretty fast. BEC for the contract glazer side, GPAD for the fabricator. If you have never heard of GPAD, it's glass processing and automation days. And if you're a fabricator, you need to be there. It's your opportunity to learn more about everything that's going on the fabrication side, improve your business, strategize, best practices, new equipment, new software, you name it. It is coming up at the beginning of March in Nashville. You can check both of those out at glass.org and hit the events tab, and there's info on both of them. And I'll have a special podcast coming out February 18th, looking at both of them from the eyes of two different people heavily involved in both spaces. And so that's GPAD and BEC March from the NGA, glass.org to check that out. Okay, let's get into the pod. Nick kicks it off with talking about the forecast and really some interesting takes. And then on the back end, Tim, all over the glass side, also a look at solar and communication. Really love both conversations, and let's get it going now. Okay. To kick things off here in 2024, second episode of the year, it's the recurring guest edition, and I'm thrilled because this is the third year in a row that I've been able to have Nick St. Denis on, Director of Research, KMR, Key Media and Research. Find him online and all of his great work online at research.keymediaresearch.com. Also can find him on usglassmag.com, the new website there. Look for the industry research under the products and services tab. Nick, thank you so much for doing the podcast again.
Thanks for having me, Max. I appreciate the fact that I think we're on the third year now. So that's pretty cool that we've done this. It feels like it's gone by pretty quickly.
It has gone by really quickly, and you are definitely back by popular demand. I hear it all the time. It's like, will Nick be back? Will Nick be back? And so everybody, is looking forward to it. And some people get lucky to see you in person at the various events that you do, and then others look forward to seeing it or listening to it on here. So really appreciate you coming on. And for those that don't know you, I've known you now for a few years. Just a quick background on who you are, where you came from. So those that are just tuning in for the first time understand what you bring to the table.
I appreciate that. And first of all, I'm lucky to be a part of the industry. I mean, I've been in the industry for 10 years now, which has also gone by very quickly. And I feel very, very lucky to be part of the industry. So many great people. But I appreciate you saying that. And I'm happy to be a recurring guest. And I'm glad to hear that what we've talked about in the past has been helpful. So I'm the Director of Research with Key Media and Research. We're a leading information provider to the U.S. architectural glass and glazing industry. We also cover residential fenestration and some other segments, including automotive glass and automotive and architectural films, which I do a fair amount of work in as well. But primarily, most of our work that we're doing is in architectural glass and glazing, of late at least. I started out as an assistant editor of U.S. Glass Magazine and worked on several publications in the industry. And then about 7 years ago, we launched the research division, just kind of had increasing inquiries for, more information, more trend data, custom research, things like that. So we decided, I had an interest in it before that. And so when the opportunity came about, I jumped on it, and we've just been kind of growing ever since with it. about half of what I do is sort of syndicated data that we provide to the industry, reports like the ones that we'll talk about later and that you've seen before. And then the other half of my work, primarily, in addition to working with the magazines, the other big portion of it is doing custom work for primarily suppliers, but mainly just large industry players, and those interested in the industry, giving them insights and data to help them make their decisions.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And the nice thing about you is that you got your feet wet kind of on the journalism side. So you learned about the industry before you started to research it. I think it all makes more sense to you versus like a data scientist who comes in and knows nothing about glass and glazing and has to kind of crunch numbers. You know it, and now you have that ability, you have that mindset to crunch numbers. So it's a best of both worlds. It makes you probably feel a little bit more comfortable about what you're putting out.
Yeah. And I actually, so working an editorial role, you are covering the entire industry, not just glazing contractors, not just fabricators. You're covering the hardware guys. You're covering everything you can possibly imagine. And so it's you're kind of jumping in headfirst into this large pool of the glass industry. And so I was able to learn a lot of the segments of the industry. And what I always found interesting about it is how they all tie together. And when I would go to trade shows and I'd speak to different companies in different categories, they are complete phenomenal experts at the one thing they do.
Right.
And what I realized is that a lot of them maybe didn't have as much knowledge on the other segments of the industry because they're so focused on what they do, which is what all of us really do. So I always found it interesting to kind of tie all the things together and see how everything works together. And so that's part of the reason why obviously there's all the various publications in the industry, we provide that information. But for me, the next step was to kind of take it the next step further and actually be there to provide insights for them and work alongside them, on projects to help make decisions and things like that. And so, yes, it's been, it's a quicker learning curve when a client comes to us and has a particular project. If they were to go to a large market research firm that covers a million industries, a lot of times those firms would call us and learn about the industry before they do the project. Well, you get to skip all that with us, obviously. So we have a relationship with a lot of
Sure.
companies as well. So yeah, it's just been a good transition for sure.
It's awesome. And has it really been 10 years? You've been in this industry 10 years? Time
Yeah,
is flying.
I know the start of 2014 is when I started, and it's the neat thing about it is I look back on my life, and most major events in my life have happened, since then.
Yeah.
So and that's probably why it's gone by so quickly for me at least. But yeah, it's been 10-year anniversary now. So
Yeah,
yep,
when you have a couple kids, they go real fast, and I know you've got them, so it makes
yep,
time go quickly. So
for sure.
so let's talk about time. Let's go back to last year first, and where I'm really interested about 2023 was that as we were entering in 2023, we all felt, or not we all, but there was a lot of experts that felt that there was going to be a recession, and by some definition, there was a recession. There was a little bit of a ballyhoo about that. Really the overall thing though is how did you think 2023 went based on, how you analyzed it going in, what you looked at and just the kind of the feel for last year. Did it go as planned?
Yeah, one thing I learned about myself over the past few years is I guess I'm slightly more optimistic than most others, or at least than maybe the larger when compared to like the larger economic outlook. Because I'm so hyper focused on the glass and glazing industry, and I'm constantly doing survey research of the industry, and I'm constantly talking to fabricators and manufacturers and contractors, getting their perspective. And so I saw things looking relatively stable and a little bit positive actually going into last year. And what was kind of surprising is the year over year growth rate in terms of the value of architectural glass and glazing. We projected an increase of about mid-single digit percentage, maybe a little bit less than that, 3, 4, 5%. And we saw almost double that in terms. It was just under 10% for overall growth. A lot of that had to do with inflation, and we saw the price increases of the previous year kind of drag to last year, and so that kind of inflated the numbers a bit. But still, the growth was larger than we actually expected, and so from our account, we thought things were still looking relatively stable, and they seemed to pan out that way, based on the fact that our industry we cover so many different segments of the economy. When you think about it, that when one thing is down, something else might be up, and we're able to kind of balance ourselves because of that diversification.
No doubt, no doubt. And was there anything specifically that caught your eye in 2023 before we move on to talk about what's coming up in 2024?
Sure. I mean, something that we did kind of predict would happen based on what, well, not really predict is what we heard would happen, and it did, is the institutional side has really kind of taken the lead in terms of growth compared to commercial. So, after the Great Recession, commercial kind of was the first one to get going. Institutional came up, and when I refer to that, commercial is more your office, lodging,
Right.
retail type buildings, and institutional will be healthcare, educational, public buildings, things like that. And the educational and healthcare sector have just been really booming over the past several years. And so that's really stood out to us. And we saw it both in we kind of I look at I have construction spending data that I follow, and then we use different formulas and models to calculate glass and glazing. I saw it there, and then I also did the surveys of the industry and found that they were saying the same thing, which is nice when they match up. Both, no matter which way you look at it, healthcare, educational, growing, and institutional is looking strong. So that was a really good thing we saw.
That has to be a major fist pump for you when you take your two buckets of info and they actually come together the right way. I got to assume as a scientist that you are right now, that's got to make you feel good when the numbers compute correctly.
It does, and it's more often than not that's been the case, which is great. But there are certain segments, particularly on the residential side, like multifamily is one that it depends on who you ask, what the outlook is, and it could change on a dime. But glazing contractors have been more bullish on multifamily than what I had seen looking ahead. So that was kind of interesting too.
Interesting. And this is a little bit off topic. Multifamily, sometimes I do think it gets confused, like because when you look at the skyscrapers that get built in South Florida, those are like they feel like pure commercial buildings versus they're condos. They feel like pure
Right.
commercial buildings versus a multifamily structure. And I wonder if sometimes they get confused in the data. Does that happen? Do you think that happens and people don't understand how to explain what is what?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, so when we look at multifamily, we strictly go. I pretty much cut out anything that's fewer than 20 units in a building,
Okay.
and 20 or more, you're still going to get those non-skyscrapers, smaller multifamily buildings, but you have to kind of find a cutoff point in the data. And yeah, and another thing that is actually a little bit makes it a little bit confusing too is the fact that we built a lot of the buildings now are mixed use buildings, where you have
Yeah.
retail on the bottom, even some office space, and then you have multifamily in the middle, and then you have high-end residential on the top, and it just becomes a bit difficult to track. And I think that makes it tough too. But we pretty much just try to do the best we can with what we have, kind of thing.
And you do. I appreciate you clearing that up because that's something I always get. I always think that may get thrown, and especially you added in there that the mixed use now is definitely a big play, big play. So I'm with Nick St. Dennis, Director of Research at KMR, Key Media and Research. You can find him online and his info online at research.keymediaresearch.com. Also find him on the pages of usglassmag.com, new website there, and also in the physical magazine that comes out. There's usually something in there, and you've got some products coming out later this year, and we'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about 2024. That's we have you on at the beginning of the year so you could talk about the year to come. You just spoke in Florida. People raved about it. I was there. I missed it, but everybody came down and told me how great you were. So congratulations on that. What are you thinking for 2024? What's up? What's down? What's the gut feel for these? Or not the gut feel. It's what's the science telling you?
Well, I think finally the picture is a little bit clearer because when we came out of the pandemic and it was tough to know exactly what was going to happen. 22 we grew. It was a pretty good strong year of growth after 21 pulling back, and then going into last year was when we were kind of trying to figure out what was going to happen, and it was the overall economy was in question, and the construction economy specifically was I would say semi-positive, but really kind of tepid and kind of had a moderate outlook. And so looking into this year, one of the benefits we have is that we sort of have that whole inflationary issue somewhat behind us where prices are starting to stabilize. So it'll be a little bit easier to get an idea of what the growth is going to look like in the year ahead because, with prices stabilizing, we can look more at volume and kind of figure out, okay, based on the volume, what's going to happen. So with all that said, we do see commercial finally ticking back a little bit. Commercial kind of had been growing strongly and then slower growth over the past couple of years. and now that's gonna pull back. But institutional, we still feel is going to increase. So we're expecting mid-single digit percentage increases in healthcare and educational again, which is going to drive that institutional side, and that's why glazing contractors have been so optimistic about that. And then the one big one that everybody's talked about in the last few years, office, right?
Yeah.
So coming out of the pandemic, everybody assumed office was going to plummet and think the sky was going to be falling. Well, it didn't. That didn't quite happen immediately because obviously there's still ongoing projects that were happening. There were projects that were going to happen that just needed to restart after the pandemic. So there was a bit of a backlog in office that kind of kept that segment at least staying even, maybe growing slightly.
Yeah.
But we're finally seeing that the decrease in construction starts over the past couple of years, that's going to finally start to materialize into a lower value of activity in glass and glazing in the next 2 years for office.
Office is definitely a challenge. I think we all hope that it because it's such a bread and butter for us.
Yeah.
And that's why I think there's so much hope there because we all, you look at how many it touches, the interior, the exterior. I mean, it's such a big piece. And so what you're saying is that we're finally the bill is finally coming due. It looks like on the office side.
Yeah, but it looks like it's going to be relatively flat though.
Okay.
For most of the economic forecasters that we follow on the construction side, when you kind of balance them all out, it seems like we're going to see a little bit of a pullback, but it's not going to be this massive dip, at least not yet. That could happen maybe in a few more years, but right now it's just going to kind of flatten out. And then, like I said, a lot of the activity is kind of transitioning over to different segments. And one of the big ones that we've seen over the past 2 years, the biggest faller during COVID, which is hotel lodging construction, has been the largest area of growth over the past 2 years in commercial because that pent up demand, it just bounces a trampoline. Just
Yeah.
the further down it went, the bigger bounce back we had. And because you're seeing a return in leisure travel and business travel over the past several years, that segment's bounced right back up. And so that's been, and especially in the major metro areas, the hotels and lodging type buildings fall under the same building style as office. So you can kind of see, some of that transition there. And then another big one is amusement and recreation. Just from an anecdotal perspective, I mean, I feel like everywhere I go, I'm seeing sports stadium renovations or conference center trade show venue renovations, and those obviously use a ton of glass. So that's a big positive. Then finally, the other one I would point to is transportation. There's all these really long-term airport projects that have been happening, and every time I walk through an airport, I look around and I say, man, I really need to up my estimates on the amount of glass that's used in airports because it's a lot.
Yeah, so there are a lot to unpack there. So backwards, the airport thing is amazing to me because they want those wide spans and they do use so much glass. And look at LaGuardia, beautiful project. It's taken a while, but it looks like it's really come together very nicely. But DFW and so many others. I mean, every day I'm seeing about the airports. The lodging you nailed. I've seen a bunch of different articles talking about that, and one thing that a lot of those hotels, and correct me if I'm wrong, they need to refresh every so often, and they skipped it when COVID kind of hit. So there's that demand that had to happen in 2020 and 2021, 2022 that didn't, and then just their normal schedule too.
Yep.
The problem with the hotel motel is unless they do some glass shower doors, there's not a lot of glass on the interior compared to like an office building. The hospital thing is amazing to me. The healthcare I think is going to grow. And then obviously, when you're talking about the convention centers and amusement, you're getting it from the Universal has a new park opening up in 2025. We were just down the road from it at Glass Expo Southeast. You saw the construction that was going on there. But the convention center thing, Vegas, just added on. So many others. Javits continues to add, and so there are a lot of positives. So I think the one thing that was interesting about your talk, and I got a few more questions, but I know I'm going a little off the path here, was that people kind of entered 2024 a little bit more pessimistic. And then the one feel that I got back from folks that saw you in Florida, and again, I saw them fresh. It was immediate because I was right on the floor, was that they felt more optimistic after viewing you than after kind of reading and seeing some of the things from last year. Is that just because, like you said earlier, you're more naturally optimistic, or it's a combination of being optimistic and what the numbers are showing you?
I think, yeah. So in terms of myself being optimistic, it's
Or it's
something
your
that
personality. Your personality is
well,
optimistic too. You're a bright, shiny guy.
well,
So
I don't. I honestly though, yeah, it's really. I really interpret what I get from the data, and most of it's based on. I kind of get a reading off of people and all the survey research I do in the data, and then I kind of that bounces off of me, and then I just put that out there. So it seems like it's because of myself being optimistic with things, but really I'm just kind of reflecting what I hear. And one of the funniest thing I was thinking about this the other day. Um, and you might run into this. This might ring true
yeah.
for you too. You talk to people in the industry, or pretty much anybody, right? And you ask them, so how do you think things are going to go? What's the outlook? You know, well, there's this going on and that's going on, and they're pointing to what they heard on the news most recently, and they look at things from like a larger, maybe like a worldview, and this and that's happening with the economy. This is happening in politics. And there's like this naturally just kind of pessimistic. When you ask somebody what their outlook is, it's just kind of pessimistic in a way. Um, and then they kind of say the same thing about the things that they see in the industry that might be pulling back. And then you go, okay, so how your backlog's looking? Well, we hit record backlog last year.
Right.
All right,
Right.
what are your sales expectations? Well, next year, we're expecting 15% increase in sales. I'm like, okay, well then, and then I have the same conversation with all these people, and it feels like everybody thinks that they're the only ones that are doing well, and that the world is falling apart. So when I interpret all of that data that I get in, it sound to them, they're like, well, yeah, it makes sense for me, but I thought that things weren't that great. And so I think that's kind of why I naturally sound more optimistic, because I'm getting positive feedback from everybody, even though they're not necessarily realizing that they're giving it.
Love it, love it. That's good. Now it all makes sense. Again, with Nick St. Denis, Director of Research, KMR, Key Media and Research. Check out his stuff, research.keymediaresearch.com. So renovation and retrofit, that's a big one for me, and that's one that continues to kind of just go round and round on a couple different levels. In New York, you have Local Law 97, which is spurring a lot of renovation because they've got to meet these local ordinances. Then you have the fact that you have what we talked about earlier, the office building. There's a glut of office openings. Are they going to be changed and remodeled into other things? Living possibility, so on and so forth. And just the natural, like we were also talking about earlier, the need to renovate. We have a lot of old buildings, a lot of old stock. What are you seeing on the renovation and retrofit side going forward?
So we just see continued growth, continued growth. Um, we ask a question in the annual survey that we do of glazing contractors, and we ask them, are you anticipating an increase, no change, or decrease in renovation retrofit work in the coming year? And pretty much every single year that's ticked up and up and up, and that's basically mostly regardless of the region, but really just nationwide. It seems like that's a big trend, and that's part of the reason why you might the glazing contractor activity might be voting better than other parts of the industry, because if new construction building starts are down, that if you just look at that, then yes, that might be a negative. But if you're getting an increase in a lot of retrofit and renovation work, that's kind of helping balance that out. And it's what I talked about before. They're just being, if you do a little bit of everything, then it kind of tends to mean that you're going to continue to grow no matter what. So from a renovation retrofit standpoint, we definitely are getting a lot of feedback on that. Like you said, a lot of the the municipalities and different jurisdictions that are going to require an increase in energy efficiency. You've got you mentioned the office space. A lot of office space is looking at being transitioned into other things, and it's easy to say oh, we should just make that in a multifamily building. But as
Right.
you know, that's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
Which means that those projects are going to be very valuable. So that's a big one. Retail has declined. New retail construction has declined over the past X amount of years, since the Great Recession, essentially every year. But you still see a lot of renovation activity because those buildings are being used. We're not seeing that many new ones, but we're seeing them be reused. So that can mean upgrading a storefront to make it look more visibly aesthetically pleasing. That could mean interior glass, things like that. So yeah, we do see a really big opportunity for renovation and retrofit work.
Cool. And nothing drives me crazier than when you have like a strip mall and you have a handful of openings in the strip mall, and then all of a sudden they're building an auto parts place in the parking lot of the
Right.
strip mall. It's like you have all those openings. Why are you
Yeah.
building something new? But I guess it is what it is, and I'll take the glass and aluminum, but it drives me nuts from an environmental standpoint. It just doesn't
Mhm.
seem to make any sense.
Yeah.
But all right, this is good stuff. So before I move into the fun question and everything that you can offer and how people can find your info, anything we're missing, anything else you want to cover for 2024?
Yeah, so I guess just to kind of sum it up,
Yeah,
it is going to be a flatter year than we've seen in recent years. And like I said, you will see a little bit of a pullback in commercial activity. Institutional is going to continue to tick up. Residential is kind of just going to depend on how the economy goes. But overall, don't expect the huge year-over-year growth we've seen. One thing I wanted to point out that I found interesting in our research, we have the Contract Glacier Outlook Index, which is a bunch of different data points that we collect, and then we basically formulate a number on each different region. And the Midwest stood out as a big winner this year.
nice. Wow.
And it hadn't really. I don't think looking back at the last since we've been doing it the last 8 years, I don't think that one has actually been the top one. And I kind of looked into it more, and it sounds like you might be a little more familiar with this than I am, but it sounds like there's a lot of new development and multifamily construction happening in the Midwest.
Yeah, I at least I know from anecdotally around where I live. I mean, I'm seeing it, and I think Chicago continues to battle and do okay. And but it's just hard. You're normally when you see these things, it's Texas, it's Florida, it's Nashville, it's West, sort
Yeah.
of thing. But interesting that the Midwest. And so I will ask you because you only scrape the surface here on the info. So people stay tuned so you can find out where to get all this stuff from Nick and more in depth. I got to go to the fun question because it's been, you're a Jets fan. A year ago, we talked on this podcast about Aaron Rodgers possibly being the quarterback for the Jets, and you said, "I hope so." It took a little bit longer. It happened. He became the quarterback. It lasted all of 4 plays. So I have two questions on it. One was, how did you feel going into it? And I just can't imagine being a hardcore fan. I mean, I've lost playoff games, I've lost, heartbreakers, but that one is something I can't explain. A guy that comes in and is gone after 4 plays. What was the emotion for you being a big time Jets fan of losing Rodgers so quickly?
Yeah, I don't know how much time you have, so you can cut some of this later if you'd like. But yeah, it was kind of a reminder of just kind of what we have come to expect. And it was yeah, so the year we're going into this year, we were super optimistic, obviously just
Yep.
excited. Whether or not it was going to crash and burn or not, it was going to be an exciting, fun year. And I would have been fine if it didn't go great, but just to have that exciting, year. And so but there's always as a Jets fan, there's always this thing in the back of your mind that just like is just sits there and is waiting for something to happen. And I was kind of felt that, especially that entire day because it was a Monday night.
Yep.
And and yeah, literally, the first couple plays, the offensive line is terrible, and I could see him scrambling around, and I just thought to myself, this is not going to go well. At some point this year, something bad's going to happen, and it didn't take that long. It took 4 plays, and he was done.
I feel for you,
Yeah.
my friend. You were the first person I thought of. That's for sure. I felt for you. And so I also had to ask, the Jets were on Hard Knocks, and Hard Knocks is one of my all-time favorite shows. I'm curious what you thought of them being on Hard Knocks because I have some quick thoughts after you, but I'm curious, did you like it, not like it, et cetera? What did you think of the Jets being in the spotlight?
So I don't know if I'd ever told you this story, but prior to working with KMR, I was a sports writer
Yeah.
in a past life, and I was in New York State, and actually wrote for a couple of different websites for the NFL. And so I actually got to cover the Jets training camp in
Oh,
2010,
did not know that.
and that was the year that they had Hard Knocks, and they had LaDainian Tomlinson, Jason Taylor, all these guys, and I got to meet and interview all these guys, and it was a lot. It was really cool, a lot of fun. And the one thing I noticed at that time was you didn't really notice the cameras and stuff as much as you thought you would.
Right.
I was on the sidelines the entire time, and I'd look around. You see things happening, but it wasn't as in your face. I felt like probably this year, because of the media circus with Rodgers, that there was a lot more going on, and obviously it being 15 years later, or however long too. I enjoyed it. It was the best thing about it was that my wife actually loved it. She got really into it, and she was fully committed. And this is another Jets fan example. It's like she goes into the year fully committed. I know what I'm into it this year. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then that lasted 4 plays too, because then she was done. So
Yep. Well, that happens. That happens. And well, I was curious on your thoughts because I love the Hard Knocks series, but the one thing I was bummed about was they didn't dive deep enough into that scrappy up and comer. They did Xavier Gibson, which panned out beautifully because he had the punt
Yeah.
return in the first game to win it. But otherwise, you're missing some of those stories. And I know the Jets were a little hesitant for coverage and access, and and I would have liked to have seen more of it. But it's a great series.
I know they cut out the whole the aspect of them cutting players on camera.
Yep, yep.
So that kind of took a lot of drama out of it, which is I mean, it's probably a good thing overall. But yeah, a lot of the nitty gritty, they were so focused on probably getting, views, and everybody wanted to tune into Rodgers that they did miss out on a lot of that stuff. So I do tend to agree with you on that.
Yeah, but the highlight was Rodgers talking trash to the Giants player who
Oh
hit him
yeah.
late and said, "I don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
Who are you?" So it was good stuff.
I like the one. I think it was when they're practicing with Tampa, and the linebacker comes up. He's like, you're not coming. Back up. And he
That's
knew
funny.
he wasn't. He knew he was just faking it, and it was great. Yeah. So, but we didn't get to see that in the regular season. So hopefully we get to see it this year.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, good stuff. Good stuff. I got a couple more questions for Nick St. Dennis, the director of research of KMR, Key Media and Research. Find his stuff online, research.keymediaresearch.com, and let's talk about that stuff. You have a few offerings, that people can get to, and you mentioned earlier, you do research, for companies that want specific research, but talk about what's available to the public and where they can get it and when they can get it.
Yeah, so in terms of our readily available data, we kind of have three sort of options. And the first thing is we have the Glass and Glazing quarterly review, and that's a completely free quarterly PDF report for industry members. You can sign up on the website on research.keymediaresearch.com, or you can search it online. You'll probably be able to find it there, or just feel free to reach out to me and I'll get you on the list. That one comes out every quarter, and that's I think you get that one as well. And that's
I
a good
do.
summary of the
Yes.
industry, kind of what's happening, more rear facing, and then a little bit, a little bit of a preview, give you a few nuggets looking forward. Then we have the Glass and Glazing Industry Outlook, which is our annual report that we put out, typically in February. That one will be coming out in the next couple of weeks, and that's sort of a big look ahead at the year and kind of summarizing the state of the industry. And then the third big thing we've added last year is we started a website called Glass Data, and it's basically the industry outlook on steroids. So it's a subscriber based website where you can log in, get all the data. You can access all the data from on a historical standpoint. It has more forecasting than the regular report and things like that. So those are kind of the three major things we do.
Yeah, so I get the newsletter, and the newsletter is fantastic. So that's a must. I get the Outlook, and I buy that every year. That is money well spent. Absolutely a must. And so, folks, if you're not doing that, do that now. I'm not as familiar with the new one, the Glass Data. I have not signed up for that yet. I don't do. How's that going? And I assume it's probably a continued work in progress because there's nothing else like it in our world.
Yeah, it's going really well. It's we try to do things the right way. So I started out with most of the data that we have that's surefire and that we've been able to collect over a number of years, and we're kind of adding to it as we go. But it's going really well. You can find architectural glass and glazing spending figures, forecasting. We update things either monthly, quarterly, or annually, depending on the type of data. We have glass lead time averages on there. We've got an expanded top contract lasers database,
Nice.
all sorts of different things on there that pretty much anybody touching the industry could utilize.
And you can find that also at research.keymediaresearch.com, or does that have its
Yep.
own home as
It
well?
has its own URL. You can find it through there.
Hmm.
The URL is myglassdata.com.
Gotcha.
And that's where you can sign up. But if you want to get information, you have to go to the KMR site because it's a subscriber-based site. So if you go to the site, you get a little bit of what it's about, but you really, if you want to get information, you kind of got to reach out. So
Okay. So three different paths, and to get and again, the quarterly one's a must, and that's free. The Outlook comes out with a cost that's well worth it. And now the myglassdata.com and the glass data piece is exciting. And I promise by the time we talk next year, when you return next year to recap this year, and we talk about the amazing Jet season that's going to happen, because we're an optimist now. We're staying
yeah,
optimistic.
right.
You're an optimistic forecaster, pessimistic Jet fan. But we'll talk about that and how good it is. So that's exciting.
Sounds
So
great.
curious, are you speaking at Glass Expo Northeast? I know a couple years ago that you spoke, and then you had you had a birth of one of your children, so that kind of changed that.
Yeah.
Are you going to be at Glass Expo Northeast in March? I believe it's in mid March, right? In
Yep.
Long Island.
Yep. So I don't know the exact date. I think is mid to late March,
Yes.
and yeah, maybe mid March you could say. And so yeah, I'll be speaking there the first day. I believe I'll be on at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I look forward to kind of giving that forecast. It's obviously similar to what I do at all the glass expos, but it has a focus on the specific region.
Right, and that was the one thing that the folks in Florida liked that you did, very specific to Florida. So if you're going to Glass Expo Northeast, you can see Nick in person, and check him out, and then otherwise, you can see him and get his information online, research.keymediaresearch.com, also in the pages of US Glass Magazine, usglassmag.com under the Products and Services tab, and, the new myglassdata.com. Very, very cool. So good stuff, my friend. I'm excited. You're rocking and rolling. You happy? You happy?
Yes, I love it. I appreciate it, Max, and I just love the fact that I can continue to be a part of the industry and continue to meet people, and seeing the same people over and over at the shows and getting to know them is a rewarding thing, and I do mean that for sure.
No, no doubt. You're a very popular person, and our mutual friend Rob Struble of Vitro is a huge fan. And when you're a friend with Rob Struble, you're set for life. You know, he's a
Yeah,
good man.
Rob's a great guy. Yep, we love Rob.
He suffers with you being an Islander fan, but we won't even come close to getting into that one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's a Penguins fan, so we kind of have a little bit of a rivalry there. But yeah, so
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you again for doing it this year. Nick St. Denis, thank you so much for being here. And folks, make sure you're subscribing to his stuff so you can stay up to date on all the data out there. And I look forward to seeing you in person at one of these events.
I appreciate it, Max. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, another recurring guest, back by popular demand. The masses wanted him back because Tim Widner is my guest, VP of Glass and Transparent Plastics at Lippert Components. You can find them online at lci1.com. And the reason that Tim really resonates with this audience is he comes at it like no one else. He's brilliant. He is the glass guy.
Easy, Max, easy.
But that's, I mean, with your experience and everything. So people are like, hey, the episode I had you on, way back a couple years ago, was one of the most listened to of that year. And I've been, getting feedback from people of, who they want new and who they want back. And you were one of the people they wanted back. So I've teamed you up with Nick St. Denis from KMR Research, and he's back for another time. You guys are the recurring guest episode. So Tim, thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't know if that makes me a tall giraffe or a tall dwarf, but I listen anytime, man. I appreciate coming on and talking about this crazy thing we do.
Absolutely. So before we dig into the craziness, and you've visited Vegas for CES, you've had a run of different things to get your mind really rolling. Real quick for those who may have missed the episode from a couple years ago and don't maybe know who you are, a little bit of background of Tim Widner, where you came from, and how you ended up in this wild industry.
Yeah, so my family's from the glass industry. I'm originally from Cleveland, Akron area. My mother, my extended family are all PPG people, old PPG people.
Right, the original PPG.
Yeah, original PPG, Twindo and architectural metals, curtain wall, that whole business. So I always did that as a kid and was around that as a kid and never really thought I'd get into it. And kind of odd story, I ended up in Indianapolis going to college, and my mother, Max was I think she was the first employee for Arch, which is now True Light,
right
north of the Mason-Dixon line. And just so happened I was one summer after I think my sophomore year of college, they were opening a plant in Indy, and ended up going to work there. And long story short, depending on who you ask, I don't remember it being so glamorous, but at the time, I think I was the youngest GM plant manager in Arch probably history. At that time, I was 20 years old, running a $1 million a month plant while I was still going to college.
Amazing.
So yeah, I worked for some great guys, got great learning experience out of that. From there, I graduated from college and got recruited by industry staple Patty Lample, who a lot of people probably know, to go to Chicago and be involved in sort of a startup. It's continuing operation of a company that was growing really fast called Republic Windows and Doors in the vinyl and aluminum window space. So I moved to Chicago, started doing that. I became director of manufacturing there, still, young in my 20s, and For those of you that don't know, Republic is probably the greatest assembly of talent that never was. It's just unbelievable people I worked with there, and that's what you get in downtown Chicago, right? You learn to run the rat race against the best of the best, and
Sure.
I learned a tremendous amount there. And Republic infamously fell apart in the collapse of 2008, 2009. And it was a learning experience, a sobering thing. It was all sorts of stuff. And then from there, I became a consultant for a few years. I was doing some crisis management, some private equity things for some startups. It was great. I loved it. That was a very, very, very fun time in my life.
Yeah.
But I was on the road a lot, had young kids, so transitioned out of that. Kind of got the lead to a company up here in northern Indiana that was a startup, more or less. Really needed some help, so I decided to make a move back up north, and which is, this is where I'm from. This is what I do. I'm a guy, Midwesterner. So at the time I was living in Atlanta, so I moved back up here so I could be home, and did this startup, and it was, awesome. Took that startup to a sale in 2017, I think.
Right.
And then was ready to move on. That company was called Clear Vision. I was ready to move on from there, and got the call from Lippert looking to grow and expand, and I've been here since then, and it's been an incredible 6 years. Yeah, it's been
Great company.
wild.
Yeah, top-notch company.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
it's been incredible. Built 700,000 square foot plant here in northern Indiana, right off the toll road. We're crazy. We do
Yeah.
anything and everything. TPS IG lines, digital printers, bending furnaces, 3 tempering furnaces, all sorts of stuff.
And that's what I liked about you, when we talked the last time, and really my friendship with you is the fact that you're so well versed because you've worked in every sort of scenario.
Yeah,
Arch, we were like meatball surgeons on MASH. That's we were really good at what we did, but we only could go to a certain level. Then you go to, Republic is a massive operation, residential
Yeah.
windows in the toughest of markets. And then, you do the consulting, you're finding some of the newer stuff. Then you end up at Lippert where they're doing everything and everything and under the sun and then some, and also,
Yeah.
into the transportation side of things. So
Yeah.
you've touched commercial, residential, transport, solar. I mean, you've been into pretty much everything. And that's why I give you the props at the start about being a glass guy. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a glass product you have not played with.
Max, you're probably right. Some of the laboratory stuff I haven't gotten into, but a lot of people know me as an automotive guy,
Yeah.
which is
funny,
crazy.
actually. I think it's
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's crazy to me
Yeah.
because I'll be in meetings and just surprise people of like, well, I'm really an architectural guy, and they're like, what? so then it'll spin into, well, maybe actually really I'm a residential guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it goes all over the place. But look, that's the great thing about this business is, glass is like a Swiss Army knife for a career, man. There's all sorts of things that you can do. And listen, I've even thought about, man, I think containers and bottling, like I would like to learn about that and kind of see how that's done better. And I mean, there's just so much that goes into it. There's a lot that can be done for sure.
Have you ever done Glass Tech in Germany, Dusseldorf?
Oh yeah, I do it
Okay.
all the time.
Okay.
In fact, Matt,
yeah.
I meant to tell you,
Yeah.
so I was staying on the boat with you at last Glass Tech, and I had gotten so sick at Glass Tech. I don't know if it was a COVID variant or what, but I was deathly ill. I was a guest of Spellman's and Manny's. Like I had set me up with a room there, and you sat behind me at breakfast, and I was in such a daze. I don't even remember it. It was
wow.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't know.
It was. Yeah.
Well, I feel bad that you weren't feeling well. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was racing to the airport that day. It was absolutely miserable. That was probably one of the most sick I've ever been. So, I'm on a plane flying back to America acting like I'm not sick. So
yeah, exactly. You have to hold
I
it
don't go into quarantine
in this day and age. Well, the reason I was asking is you'd be a fun one to walk around Glass Tech with, just because of your experience, and then also to see your reaction to the bottling and the the
Yeah, yeah,
packaging side that they have there. So interesting.
yeah,
So if I go
yeah.
back and you go back, I assume you're going. I don't know. I'm waiting to hear if I'm going, but if we're both there, I look forward to spending some time with you.
Yeah, yeah, I'll definitely be there. I'll
Good,
definitely be there.
good, good. All right, so let's get into one of the things when I reached out to you about coming back on the podcast. You're like, "Hey, I just got back from Vegas. I was at the CES show, and my mind's a little blown by everything. Talk to me. What did you see? What's got you going on out there?
Well, I'll tell you a couple things I saw that aren't glass related that I was just blown
Yeah,
away about. I was, obviously Lippert has a huge marine business, and we make a lot of windshields and direct glass to the marine industry. From pontoon boats to super yachts at our plants over in Europe. And so, I was over there checking out some stuff with Brunswick, one of our customers, and just our ConAg stuff was over
hmm
there as well. But I started looking at some desalination units that were kind of more portable that could go on smaller boats. I thought it was incredible technology. Desalination is one of those things that is interesting, if you look into it and kind of see how all that works and what the challenges are. But I was checking that out, and also I've been an outspoken critic of school construction and school shootings.
right.
I think you and I have exchanged messages. I saw this incredible AI system from Bosch that was basically a gun detection system. So, people walking up towards a door, like this system could detect anything odd about that person,
Wow.
whether they had a gun in their hand or possibly one concealed. It was absolutely awesome. And, here I am all these years saying, we can build schools and vestibules to stop this stuff, guys. Like, let's just stop. This is nonsense talking about
Yeah.
gun control, because that's not going to happen.
Right. Right.
And so that was very, very cool. So on the non-glass related
Yeah.
front, those were a couple things that I saw that I was just, so impressed by.
Very cool, very cool. And yeah, the school stuff, I mean, we need to continue to obviously push our materials, but things like that, you can identify it, but you still need the protection in case they whip it out and try to break through, you know.
Yeah, or at least get the doors to lock
Right.
on site or
Yeah.
on notice, and yeah, all sorts of stuff like that. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
I would hope,
unfortunate that we have to talk about this,
yeah.
but yeah.
And I would hope post Nashville last year that there's never a piece of tempered in a school door light ever again.
Yeah, yeah,
That
for
was
sure.
insanely ridiculous. So how about anything glass and glazing related that got you going out there?
Yeah, so some really cool stuff. That CES has pretty much become 40% automotive, I would guess. A
Wow.
lot of that
Wow.
show is automotive related now. And I was specifically out there checking out the next generation of heads-up displays and
Right.
embedded materials and glass for driver assistance and display. Saw some really cool technology that we're looking closely at on that front. Thin glass continues to be,
Yeah.
that is a train coming at us with, a lot of force. It's coming.
It's been a
Big
boiling,
business coming.
it's really been a boiling pot, and it's been simmering and simmering and simmering, and it's just going to finally take off. I mean, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Yeah. The thin glass stuff is starting to get, to a level that's pretty high end, high quality.
Yep.
And I'm also, I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm an advisor to a company called Solar Window Technologies.
Yep.
It's a lot of people are familiar with Ubiquitous. We're
hmm
basically the same,
Yep.
kind of competition. So I was out there working on some solar window stuff, and what we have coming, what I'm sure Ubiquitous, everybody else has coming in that space is just so super impressive. The technology, it's still a little ways away, but it's when it hits, it's gonna be massive.
Yeah. Well, and it's a great way to utilize the space on the buildings and on homes to be able to harvest energy. And that's always been my
Yeah,
thing, is that we can take a space that right now isn't doing anything and make it active and do it something. And, and
yeah,
energy is huge. And no matter what we're trying to figure out here with, cars, electric or hybrid or traditional, the energy situation is always going to be a play, and if we can do something with our glass, that's a plus. That's a plus.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And then I think kind of the last thing that I was working on out there that's of importance is really the next level of automation. What we do today everywhere in the glass industry, it's frankly dumb automation, right? It's pick and place. You're programming a FANUC robot to follow a path. It doesn't know any better than just to follow that path. So, the next level is really smart automation and cobots and deep learning and, some mobile manufacturing style environments where these, through camera systems and LiDAR and all sorts of stuff that can actually perform functions on their own and learn over time how to do them better. And that, not that that's happening anytime soon for me or for Lippert, but it's something that I'm very fascinated with, and the next level of automation and plant automation.
Yeah, I would like us to just get a little bit deeper into the dumb automation. We have so many
Yeah.
plants. I mean, I'm sure you run into this because people ask your opinion on things. But the thing that drives me crazy is when I hear somebody that's opening up a new plant and they're not looking at automation.
Yeah.
And I'll say, why aren't you putting automation in? And they'll say, well, it's too expensive. I'm like, you can't find the human capital to run this machinery. Why in the world would you go down this path in the year 2023 or 2024? And yet they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
They do. And
Yeah.
so it's
100%. That's, that's almost like throwing good money after the bad.
it
If
is.
you're opening a plant today and not looking at some level of automation, at least some level of automation, or planning for it, engineering for it down the road of what it could be, that's throwing good money after the
Yeah.
bad, if you ask me. But
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Now this is good. I'm with Tim Widner, VP of Glass and Transparent Plastics at Lippert Components, and he's got this long history in the glass business. So I'd love to pick his brain, and I'm really curious on this one. We talked back in the late summer of 2022. A lot seemingly has changed in these last couple of years.
yeah,
Um,
like
so
two wars.
war we've had a little of everything. It's been something. For you personally, has everything kind of gone to plan from 2022 to now? How has that all gone? And what has surprised you? I mean, I know we just talked about geopolitical, but anything has surprised you, caught you off guard in these last couple
uh
of years?
yeah, the resilience of the American economy, I think, has surprised me, man. Listen, I'm not joking. Two wars. Face it, we are in two wars,
Yeah,
whether people want to admit that or not. A presidential year.
yeah,
We're in a presidential year right now, and God only knows what that's going to bring.
yeah.
Um,
Inflation has been nightmarish.
Inflation has been interest rates. What's happened
Yes.
with interest rates? Um, uh, you know, it's been crazy. So to say, have they gone to plan? No, but I think I said back then, and as I said when we started, we're in a Swiss Army knife industry where you can transition in and out of things. You can spot sell, you can spot buy, you can do all sorts of stuff to stay alive. But I think that the resilience of the American economy has really proven why this is the greatest country in the world. And through all of those things, we're still, you know, buying homes, refinancing homes, buying vehicles, buying
Yeah.
recreational vehicles and boats and side by sides and all sorts of stuff. And if you couldn't tear us down over the last 2 years, it is going to be hard. I don't know
Yeah.
what else you could throw at us.
Though, as you said, with the the election in November, this year is got some bonker nightmares ahead. I think I'm a little nervous about the way the fall is going to be. Just
Yeah,
hoping
I
for the
mean,
best.
but Max, you know what I think is most American, and I'm not speaking for Lippert here, so this isn't,
Yeah,
anything forward, about Lippert or Solar Window or any other company that I'm affiliated with. But I think the American consumer is, kind of over the political drama. And, we're going to continue to lead our lives and do what we do and grow our families and grow our personal.
Good take.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that that's going to continue to happen, and it's going to take something major to tear us down. And listen, there's probably people trying, I'm sure, but to be where we are right now after what's happened over the last 24 months is, kudos to the American economy.
Yeah, and you're dead on. And our industry itself is very resilient, but I think when you talk about the people, it really is. Everybody is just continues to hustle to be able to live, and so yeah, it's been an interesting little run, and will be an interesting year coming up for sure. Now, so I got to lighten it up. So headed to the fun question, and very curious on this one. And I have no idea what your tastes are, but the go-to food for Tim Widner, what is your must-have, never turn down sort of thing?
Yeah, so my go-to food, this is probably going to be surprising to people, but I'm
Please don't
married
say
to
gas station sushi, because the last time I asked this question, it was gas station sushi, and I almost lost my mind.
No, I'm married to a second generation Korean American, so I absolutely love Korean food.
Love it.
It
Okay.
is, it's at first I wasn't a fan, and then my mother-in-law is a fantastic cook, so that helps.
Oh yeah.
But I cannot turn down good Korean food, man. My wife has shown me a new path.
I like it. Is there a specific meal in the Korean, universe there, food wise?
There is, and it's kind of it's not a well-known one. It's a type of soup called taechan jjigae, and
Okay.
it's a very pungent soup that I don't know what it is about it. It's like extreme home cooking, and I love it. It's fantastic. My mother-in-law makes the best. It's
I love it.
absolutely the best. Yeah.
Very cool. Very
It
cool.
is something I would have not even stuck my nose in 30 years ago to
Yeah.
smell.
College
And
Tim Widener's not eating
no,
Korean food.
no,
No way.
no, but I love it. It's fantastic.
Fantastic. Love it. Great answer. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. I got Tim Widener with me. A couple more questions because he's a busy man. VP of Glass and Transparent Plastics at Lippert Components. You can see them online, lci1.com. They're a massive force, and if you don't know about them, check them out. I'm really curious about this one because you have been around. We talked about your path, and you have been, like we said earlier, in every sort of kind of situation scenario. I'm really curious, what is the most important thing you've learned, in our space and really in your career? I mean, could you settle on just one? I know I gave you this question ahead of time, but I'm curious, what's that one big takeaway you've had?
Yeah. I think on the business front, and listen, I have odds with this all the time with certain people, but the biggest thing for me, and this it's going to sound harsh, but hear me out after I say it.
Yeah.
Is the biggest thing I've learned is always be honest and do not lie to customers. That's number one. I think if you're not good at making something, it's okay to tell a customer, hey, I'm not good at that. Like, that's not my wheelhouse. I want to learn. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to do better. But don't, for the sake of a sale, say you're good at doing something or you can provide something when you know that you're not there.
Yeah.
And that's hard for some people to hear, and I'm trying to grow a business, but look, your customer will remember that down the line, and when you are ready to go, they'll value that. So that's the biggest thing, or one of the biggest things that I think I wish more people would get and understand, is it's okay to say, I don't know how to make that, or we don't have the equipment to process that great for you. You just got to be honest with them, and either make a commitment to get them properly supplied, or grow your knowledge base and your capabilities to meet their needs. And I see it all the time where people just overcommit to customers, and it's like, man, if you would have kept that customer on your side if you'd have just been honest with them.
Yeah.
So that's a big one.
Absolutely. And that's a great take. And I think it flows into the overall communication aspect of things. That if you step up and you communicate with your customer, and you deliver the bad news,
Yeah.
at the same, rate and rate and frequency that you deliver the good news, you will be further along. And I think what
Yeah.
happens is that nobody ever wants to tell somebody that they can't do something. They definitely don't want to tell them they're not going to hit a date.
Yeah.
That's the worst phone call in the world, is when you're missing that date. But the key is you have to do it. And
Yeah.
I like what you said there, that I think that's when you're younger, it's really hard to, stay focused and not, not go off into that, find a story to kind of dance around sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a great takeaway, because hey, you and I worked at Arch kind of at different times, but I could guarantee you all of us had to fudge things, and we'd look
Oh
back and be
yeah.
like, if we were straight at the time, it would have made a big difference,
Yeah.
because we couldn't do certain things.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you said that, and I like it in the all aspect of communication. And it's a great takeaway. That's something you learn over the years, but it's something that people need to learn like right now. Yeah,
Yeah. And Max, I found, I'm a technical guy. I'm, an engineering guy, a hands-on, an R&D, a business development guy. But, a lot of times I'm a great sales guy, because I'll go to a customer and then they're like, well, thank God you brought this guy here, because now we understand. And it's not a knock on my counterparts in sales at all, but listen, customers just want to know what the challenges are, and
yeah.
the truth. And I find that wins you way more advantage, or competitive advantage down the road, than by over promising and under delivering any day.
Well, I think the whole vibe has changed in the sales atmosphere, is that customers are way beyond now the whole person coming by dropping off donuts, and that person saying, "Hey, how's the kid? How's the wife? Did you see, what the Colts did last week?" sort of thing. They want somebody who can be technically adept.
Yeah.
And if you can't be technically adept, they want you to be able to call the Tim Widner at your place and say, okay, here's our situation. What can you tell me that I can help this person? I think the old fashioned days of the stop by, looky loo sort of thing are gone. So I think that's why you're noticing it, because I think that's what people want badly.
I agree. I agree. And again, that's there's this historical operations, engineering, sales,
Battle.
kind of competition
Yeah.
thing, yeah, and the ego thing and all that. And look, at the end of the day, the customer is the customer, so it behooves you to educate them, to be honest with them, to talk about what your challenges are, talk about what you're great at. That's just my
Yep.
personal take
Yeah.
on it. And I've found that you definitely, it's the old saying, you catch way more bees with honey than you do vinegar. So,
Yeah.
I mean, honesty with them is always, this is just, it's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge.
No, you nailed it. It's interesting, and I will always laugh over the production versus sales battle.
Yeah.
That that
Yeah.
is that is a never-ending battle. But now it's more of, I think it comes down to lead times. I mean, when you're a production person, there's only so much you can do to push product out.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
you're a salesperson and you're feeling that pressure from the customer who's got a building wide open and dying, I mean, that's where that that's where it gets tough, and that's where you have to have that collaboration from all parts to be able to make it work for everybody, because you can only do so much. It's not like you can go ahead and throw up X amount of capacity just like that, especially when you're running
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Interesting. So I got one more question for you. I'm with Tim Widner, VP of Glass and Transparent Plastics, Lippert Components. So I had Nick St. Denis on. He's from KMR Research. He is a leading, forecaster. They do a lot of great data over there. And so he was on right before you, and he talked about what he saw for the economy in 2024. I'm curious what you see, because you're coming from it from a totally different angle. Yeah, and you have probably different ideas, different views. What are you seeing for the industry, the construction economy for 2024?
Yeah, I think 2024, it's hard to say. I'll talk about what I think over the
Yep.
next 24 months. And specific to the glass industry, you know, solar is going to continue to, whether it's a red person or a blue person in office, it is going to continue to grow. And just the numbers around solar are just mind-boggling.
They are.
And I think that will just, I mean, the numbers are crazy, right? And a lot of people don't know that. You may have heard this. Elon Musk says something. I think he calls it a blue square or the black square or something, which is basically we could take, I don't know what it is, 20,000 square miles or something, something like that, and build a massive solar field that could supply the entire U.S. With their energy demands in a year. And listen, that would be, a lot of glass, probably not enough float tanks in the
Nope.
world to handle that in the next 2 years. But, the cost of doing that, I don't know what First Solar says to build a solar field is, $250,000 an acre, but we could probably solve the energy crisis in America with less money than what we spent on COVID.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
I think solar is going to continue to be huge. The prospects are huge. I think, going back to earlier, we were talking about, things with thinner glass and vacuum IG, and
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Luxwall and, this cash they got from the Gates Foundation. Things like Solar Window and Ubiquitous and LandVac from Landglass.
Hmm.
I think the volumes may not continue to escalate at the rate in which they have recently, but I think the dollar per square foot is going to continue to rise exponentially with these crazy technologies. Some of this, like the Landglass vacuum IG, like a R value of 18 or something crazy. I'm sure Luxwall is somewhere around the same. It's just nuts. And I think the technological advances in saving money and energy, whether it's in a car, a bus, a home, a building, I think that's going to really take steam here over the next 3 to 5 years and grow. In the short term, I think the economy is going to remain resilient, and people are still going to want to enjoy their summers and enjoy their freedom and their recreational time away from work. I think that is, something that is here to stay and going to be here to stay. And it's kind of a new age of being outdoors and being active and all of those things is so, I honestly think it's going to remain strong, and people are going to remain staying busy and optimistic. And look, I think I'm not an economist, but I think 80% of the doom and gloom that people present is sort of a self-prophecy, that they kind of wish it into existence.
Interesting.
And I think the last 2 years have shown the American consumer is over that. That's my take on it.
That's a good take. And it's interesting take. And the one thing, the solar thing is something that is interesting, because if it continues to grow the way it's growing, it will affect the glass industry,
Oh yeah,
because it eats a lot of glass, and I
yeah,
mean, Vitro putting in a new facility will help with capacity, but as it keeps growing and more people pivot to that will eat up capacity a great deal. And especially if automotive comes back roaring, because we know automotive is somewhat middling right now. If that gets going,
yeah.
we could have a little tightness on the supply side of things.
I had written down some numbers on solar when I was at CES, and a front plate and a back plate of a solar panel. If the U.S. was to do this blue square, this 2,000 square mile, solar city, so to speak,
Yeah.
which who knows if that's right or wrong. It's something like 80 million tons of glass. It's just it's a preposterous number, it's one of those back of the napkin things I did. I'm sure somebody's going to fact check me on that, but you're sitting on a plane, you start writing down these numbers and you're like, oh my Lord, this is insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
even
it's there.
even without that, you see entire float plants now dedicated to solar, and they're coming on board dedicated to solar. So
Yeah.
it's something to continue to watch. But
another thing I wrote down on that, Max. So 21,000 square miles. There's 20,000 square miles dedicated to the oil and gas industry in the United States currently.
Okay.
So it's the same footprint,
Yeah.
basically, of the oil and gas industry to replace it with just solar. And I'm certainly not saying I know all the non-climate people are going to be
Right.
after me, but you're talking about the United States is huge. It's not that much area to get that done.
Yeah, there's definitely a possibility there. And I like your take on the resilience is what's got to carry the day. And just again, no matter what, Nick's forecast, by the way, was on the optimistic side. So, and he's looking at the data and parsing the data. So I'll take that, and he's the expert. And, I do watch all the other data points, and some are more struggling than others. But the nice thing about it is kind of like the diversity. When one area is up, the other one, it may be down, and that's what keeps everybody rolling. But I do like the mind. You're right about the mindset. If you go in with that doomsday, chances are you're bringing it on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. We're old enough to have lived through, quite a few cycles here of the glass industry. And, a lot of it is exactly that. It's people just kind of wishing it into existence. And, I think we're past that mentally in this country for sure.
And so I got to ask, this is not on my pre-selected list of questions. What do you think was worse in the long run, the Great Recession you and I went through, or COVID?
Whoa, that's a good question.
And you don't even have to answer right now. I just think it's one to ponder, because from a business standpoint, they were different. The outcomes and coming out of them were different, but the way of life change completely different. We all kind of went back to normal after the Great Recession. Our lives have changed dramatically after COVID.
Yeah. So honestly, that's where I am leaning is COVID, right? How many trillions of dollars did we go into debt?
Yeah.
And I don't listen, I certainly don't want to get into the validity of COVID.
That's definitely more of just more of the way it's just changed,
but
our
my
world.
Kids are affected.
Yeah.
Max, my son was affected in, his path to college and schooling. My daughter is affected. I think the psychological, what happened to the younger generation through that, I think is going to be known in the next 10 to 15 years.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And, again, I'm not talking about vaccine. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. Just the psychological toll and what it was, and closed the world down for basically 18 months. Like,
it's amazing to look back at it.
But you know what, Max? I think in some strange alternate universe, we talked about the resilience of the American economy, and that could have been a gut punch that woke a lot of people up it takes a lot more than that to bring us down, type of thing. So
you got that right. All right. That's how I like that. That's how we'll end, because if I keep throwing out wild questions at you, you're going to reach through the screen and punch me. So I love it. I was with Tim Widner, great guy, VP of Glass and Transparent Plastics at Lippert Components. Love his takes on all of this. I look forward to seeing you at an upcoming show here soon and spending some time with you in person. Thank you so much for doing the pod.
Yeah, hopefully I see you at GPAD.
You definitely will. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. See ya.
Okay. Thank you so much to Tim, and before that, Nick. Nick St. Denis, Tim Widner, great guests. Very honored to have them with me. Once again, this podcast brought to you by myglassclass.com from the National Glass Association. Online training, 24/7, 365, everything that you need, built by the National Glass Association with the best of professionals in this industry. So it's built by the industry for the industry. Check it out at myglassclass.com. It also features the brand new myglassfab.com. So if you're a fabricator, that's where you're going to get your education. So lots of good stuff there from the NGA, myglassclass.com. As always in the spot, we talk a little TV, and what I've got for you this month, Hijack from Apple TV. Tom O'Malley, the legend from Clover Architectural, he turned me on to this, and it's funny. It's hijack plane situation, and I joked with him, "Are you watching it while you're flying?" And he says he does, and so it's kind of funny to watch that on a plane. It's very good show on Apple. It keeps your attention. Also on Apple, and I have not watched the first episode yet, it's Masters of the Air. It's from that Band of Brothers theme of things, World War II. Looking forward to it. If it's even 10% as good as Band of Brothers, it's going to be a great watch. I'm looking forward to checking that out on Apple TV. All right, that's it for me. I'll be back in a couple weeks with a special GPAD BEC podcast, and I hope you'll check that out. But thank you for checking this one out. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. Thanks for reading the blog. Very grateful for all, and we will see you next time.
Oh, the music is stopped.